Rachel Ann Goodman, and welcome to Talk of the Bay on K-Squid. I have as my guest Gloria Morán. She is the filmmaker for The Unique Ladies, a film about women lowriders. And she's coming to the Watsonville Film Festival, sponsored by Pajaro Valley Arts, for an event on Cinco de Mayo. Tell us a little bit about the event that you're part of. You are the filmmaker. This came out in 2013, so you haven't been to a festival in a while. What brought together the film and also the film festival and all of this into one big event on Cinco de Mayo?
I screened with the Watsonville Film Festival before, when the film first came out, and I guess I've, been on the memories of folks. Also, this is the only film that exists about women in lowrider culture, so that's kind of, pretty important when like you're trying to look at, other visuals in that realm. And so yeah, they invited me for this Cinco de Mayo celebration, Cinco de Lowrider. They'll be showing Albert Pulido's film. We kind of crossed paths a little bit. I was finishing my film when he was, I think, shooting, but he was in San Diego as well. So I think it's a great little lowrider kind of slice of life to come to Watsonville and to, celebrate the community as well.
And there's a lowrider culture and club in Watsonville, I understand, as well.
Mhm. Yeah. And I think probably a few clubs, and I mean in general, the Central Valley, and the coastal areas, they have lots of little enclaves of clubs. When I started doing some of my research, I was going to car shows in Salinas, Stockton, Bakersfield. Like I was just kind of traveling all over California when I was trying to meet women lowriders.
Let's talk about lowrider culture because not everybody knows when it began and what it evolved into now. So, and your particular slice on it is the women in this sport. But let's talk first just sort of about it as a cultural phenomenon. I seem to remember, it reaching its peak in the 70s when I was growing up in the Bay Area, like in Concord, in the East Bay. And there were even songs on the radio. Low Rider was very popular, that
Mhm.
song. So it was kind of like a cool thing that reemerged or maybe had always been there, but it broke into the popular culture if you weren't even part of the Chicano community. So talk a little bit about kind of its origins that got it going in the first place.
I mean, it's have deeply rooted in post World War II, access to money, GIs who had access to money, and also the flood of used vehicles after car production came back. Um, and with the GI Bill, a lot of folks were able to buy a used car, and so then came this idea of fixing it up, right, of making it more ornate. Other things came along the way. I never want to say there's an exact origin story about why lowriders are so low. I feel like there's many different things. Cesar Chavez even mentioned that, that's just the look of being a farm worker, right? Your car is always lowered down from all of your family and gear that are going, from traveling. There's said like it was just an aesthetic thing, right? With weighing with magazines or cement blocks, until we, finally funneled into the technology of having hydraulic systems that operate the vehicles. And the hydraulics were also created and kind of to circumvent policing, because policing was occurring with the lowering of the chassis of your vehicle. It violates a police code. And so there's an interesting, like, there's definitely an interesting car culture, origin history, just like hot rod culture, etc. Um, and then there's an interesting component about, just the socioeconomic access of folks, what they have, even aesthetics, what's appreciated, right? Or what you do display on your cards to represent yourself, or your wealth, or, and then it's also about, to me, it's like what folks like to do as a hobby or disposable income. That's I am an insane Lego addict, and so that is where I have turned things. I think that's my more affordable lowrider at this point. So yeah, it's got a deeply rooted history. I think it's always been around. There's been waxes and wanes and how it's been celebrated or community has been organized for a long time. You know, there was more community events, just lowrider kind of happenings or shows, just not so much put on by like a corporate function, right? And then lowrider shows really became more corralled, policed, going inside. And that was a long part. And then now we're seeing a shift. There's even, I'm not sure if you know, but the statewide bill in California to remove cruising as a crime. That's pretty important and pretty big because no one even realizes that that's still like that's illegal to cruise, right? In that context. So
I distinctly remember, as a child seeing American Graffiti and how,
mhm,
as soon as that movie came out, cruising became a thing again. And in Santa Rosa, people would cruise up and down Maine. And yeah, the police did not know what to do. In your film, there's a really interesting thread, I think, between the police and the car clubs. And I want to talk about the clubs and how exclusively male they were and why this is such an interesting kind of breaking the glass ceiling story. But
mhm.
I want to first talk about how police show up in your film, and the history of that, because you mentioned, and I didn't know this, that the hydraulics, the bouncing, and the fancy lifting of the car in various ways on either side or four ways started to evade police profiling of the
Mhm.
drivers. So there was always an kind of a conflict, that there was a stereotype that people who drove lowrider cars were inevitably criminals. So they talk about that a little in the film. Can you expand on that concept of how that
Yeah,
relationship
that's
changed
another
over time?
one where it's kind of I mean, like where's the exact origin story? I mean, there is media that did not help in a lot of proliferation of these images and basically concretizing them as like criminal or ne'er-do-well, especially Boulevard Nights was a film that came out, and although it was big for the Chicano community, right, to see yourself on camera, to see your subculture on camera, it was pretty exploitive in a lot of ways, etc. So I think that caused some problems. The 80s was very much, at least in terms of media and Hollywood media, was very much about East LA gang culture. And so that really synthesized. And when people even talk about lowriders often, they always go, oh, it's from East LA, right? And I'm like, oh, actually, it's all over it's all over the world at this point. So that really had an impact. And I'm not sure if it's just plain racism and prejudice where it became allowable to profile folks, and but there were some issues, like if you look at the Mission District in San Francisco and their low riding, the Mission District, that was the area where police were trained before they went on duty. So you're using, a community of color as your training grounds, especially when there's something that is, a cultural product going on as well. So there's just been like many different layers, and it's almost like the lowriders that I interviewed kind of just felt like, well, this is the world we received. Like, I know I'm not bad, but I know that the police thing, my lowrider is attracting a bad element, which I think is kind of ironically hilarious because it's like, but wait, that's your cousin, right? Isn't that your friend? So who is, because these are very family oriented events, that the car shows, etc. People bring their kids and the strollers. So they very much wanted to, I guess, dismantle whatever stereotype there was about either being gang related or drug dealing, and to make inroads with the police. And for San Diego and my film specifically, it is important because National City and Chula Vista, they're two areas that are actually heavily policed, and there are a lot of issues between the folks who live there and police. And so it was really important for the lowrider community to make those inroads, pun intended. All right.
Yeah, so at one point in your film, the police are advising the lowrider community how to burnish their image. And I thought that was really funny, um, because they had already been doing toy drives and blood drives and charity rides, and trying to show that side of the sport, perhaps unsuccessfully. But it was interesting when you have the police chief who I believe was also Chicano,
Mhm.
kind of saying, hey, try this. This might help. The rest of the
Yeah.
police look at you differently.
Yeah, and it's almost like, well, why don't we actually dismantle the actual tropes that are creating, right, this problem? So but we're asking, you're asking a lot of a community who doesn't know how to do that per se, right? Just like how what I felt was filmed was working class feminism in action, but these women weren't going to say, "Oh, I'm feminist," right? Their actions were very like it was like almost clandestine feminism.
Yeah, let's talk about that interesting conflict dynamic. There's a fascinating back and forth between, I believe it's Pat, and the head of the all male club that would not let them in. And I
Yeah.
thought that the reasons why they didn't want to let them in were amazing to hear articulated because they said things like, men like to get their hands greasy and women are going to ask them for a soda. So you can't be in our club. Like, it was fascinating. So they just created their own club. Can you talk about like the process where at first these women are knocking on the door of the all male lowrider clubs?
Yeah, and that was also because one of the main club members, Sherry, she is in a relationship with a member of that male car club crowd. And so she felt that, she had enough of a connection. She had been, basically showing her car in their, collection of cars whenever they're at a show, etc. And so she, after some time, she felt like, okay, maybe I can, ask if I can join this club. But it was a resounding no, but it was, also no, but you can still come to shows, right? And so there it was a lot of
Some guys say, well, I can't have a girl with a better looking car than mine. You got to think about it like that. But that should only put the guy to make work on his car harder.
you don't get the benefits of club membership, but we really would want the benefits of your award and claiming that as part of our club, right? And so I think her talking out, the unfairness of it with her friend Pat, they both realized that they could do something together, that they, and I think both of them too, it's unique. They're both divorced, right? They started the club after their kids were grown up and out of the house. And so I think a lot of it had to do with like they finally had some time and autonomy to pursue something that they wanted to pursue, versus just pursuing it for their partner's sake.
I thought it was really interesting when you see them working on their cars on the technical side and on the body shop side. And a lot of this, they learned from their brothers or their fathers. And yet they're completely proficient. And not only that, they're winning. They're starting to get their cars that are getting more awards than the guys after a while.
We're gonna do it. We stand up there with the best of them. We're out there at the butt crack of dawn, waiting in line with everybody else, breaking our cars down, working on our cars. We're doing all the same thing they're doing, and they see it now. When we're rolling in, I love to turn down the stereo because you'll hear voices. The ladies have arrived. The ladies have arrived. And you know what that gets me right here because we work hard.
And it really, it's not just the stereotype of women don't work on cars, which is deep in all cultures. Guys do the mechanics and women just take their car into the shop and ask them some innocent questions. These women are really confident in what they're doing. And I think that takes a lot of the men aback and also makes them feel kind of worried that they're going to lose.
Yeah, and it's very interesting that right, that a lot of the response has been like, oh my gosh, they're gonna make me look bad now, like, because and they're upping their game. And it's kind of funny too, because in that vein of community service and working with the police, it was the women who spearheaded that. And then, the other clubs were like, oh yeah, maybe, yeah, we should get on that too. So I think it's interesting how much these women really, were trailblazers for, the culture of low riding.
I knew all the guys from the club. I had been hanging out with them. I had been showing and going to the picnics and rolling out with them and seeing what their rules and regulations were, and you know, after a while I was like, hey, you know, I'm doing just about as much as these guys are as members, but I wasn't an actual member.
And I used to tell her, I go, how come you're not part of the club? Why are you not part of it? Oh, well, they don't allow women. I said, you're crazy. They don't allow women in your car club. She's like, yeah. And I go, wow, you know, that mentality struck me as funny here in San Diego, where everything's so diverse. And
You'd rarely seen the females that are part of lowriding were always in the background.
If you just joined me, I'm speaking with Gloria Morán. She is the filmmaker of the Unique Ladies, a car club of all women in San Diego that's part of the Watsonville Film Festival's Cinco de Lowrider event, the 4th and 5th of May here in Watsonville. And there's another moment in the film that just struck me, which was when they were telling the Unique Ladies they could be part of the men's club, they offered to give them a plaque, and it was like an eighth of the size. And a plaque is sort of how you show what club you're in and the name of your club. And it's this embossed, beautiful chrome thing you stick on your car. And they gave them one that was like 3 inches, and the others were 28 inches. And I love at one point, one of the women says, I'm going to go over there and tell them where they could put it. It was so
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah, I mean, and it's kind of interesting too, because I appreciate, you know, I knew she was being polite in that statement too, even saying it in that way. But yeah, that felt like that real, like, outright, like, are you kidding me moment where they were just like, oh, we're done. Like, you know, and I think, you know, it represents probably a lot of probably situations where men were in control for them in their lives. And then, you know, this was a chance to really do what they wanted to do and be like proudly equal, right? In the scene.
Want to work on their cars and do it without their women being around, because sometimes women get in the way. You know, you're working on your car, your hands are greasy. Your girlfriend's gonna ask you, "Can you get me a soda?" And it's like, wait a minute, I'm doing something here. So that, you know, that's why it's guys want to do their work on their cars with other guys and get the job done.
I was hurt. I really was. I was really hurt.
The reasons, there wasn't really reasons. It was just something what the guys wanted.
I think a really strong point you make as a filmmaker, but the women in the club make, is that the history of women in lowriding has been as hood ornaments. And you show in the film some very graphic scenes that exemplify that. Can you talk about a couple of those images and also, you know, the stories that came out and this was happening pretty currently to your film. It wasn't like in the past of examples of women's sexuality being used in a very blatant way to be an ornament, especially to the men's cars.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like just models who come, and I think people just pay them to you know, to model on their cars and pose. I know that there's also like kind of like promoters who will bring models, you know, promoting. So, but it's very pervasive, and it's interesting because you know, I went to lowrider shows since I was a kid. And I even remember the wet t-shirt concerts, which were a big thing. And my dad, like, I would be on his shoulders, you know, for a concert. But then if like the wet t-shirt contest was happening, he would pull me down, right? And so I started getting this association with there are certain things that were, you know, taboo or risque, at least, like, and I know my parents kind of communicated and they struggled in communicating, you know, I think some of the onion layer issues around that, especially because I would read Lowrider magazine too. So I started normalizing these images as like, oh, this is what came with car culture, right? And it wasn't until, you know, getting older and you're a Chicano feminist and, you know, you're realizing, oh, okay, that it's the commodification of the body, right? It's using it, and it's using the body is used in the artwork, right? In the nude displays or semi-nude displays that are sometimes muralized on cars. And then it's used in, yeah, the figurative hood ornament, right, as this display model. And yeah, it's been you know, sometimes it's interesting because I've talked to some of the models and they, you know, they're like, oh, I just love being out here, right? It's always kind of like the same, like, I love it dialogue. So I've never really gotten further like, oh, why are you here? Like, what, is this fun part of involvement for you? And I'm not judging. It's just seemed to be a big trope that has happened, and we see it with a lot of other car cultures too.
Yeah, in American car culture in general.
Yeah.
You look at the 50s car commercials and the women are purring over the car as if they're having an orgasm. There's typical 50s, 60s commercials with these big Pontiacs, and, the women are kind of running their hands sensuously over the chrome of the car. And it's just borderline, to us now, it kind of looks ridiculous if you've seen it, but I think it becomes so normalized that
it really does.
People are partially dressed. And the women you interview in the car club talk about this directly, about it being about respect, that you don't have to show pieces of your body you wouldn't normally show in public in a car show if you want to be a woman involved with the lowrider culture. And I thought they said that very forcefully and clearly, that they were trying to be role models for their girls.
This is my 64 Riviera that I've had for about 4 years. It's taken about 9 trophies. I love the color fuchsia pink. It's more girly. There's a lot of competition between women and men, and the bright color brings it out, showing them that we could do just as good a job as them.
Yeah, they're trying to be role models, and I think they've had to also combat other women's prejudice of them, like saying, oh, you want to get into lowriding because you want my boyfriend, you want my husband, you're only here, in pursuit of a man, which I think that's a very expensive pursuit of a man then. But, they were getting pushback in that context as well. And I think they really wanted to say, hey, we are here for like the enjoyment, the culture, and being like having pride in ourselves. And it took a while. And now there's been a huge shift. The club is much larger. A lot more younger folks are in it now. I would say like probably even in my age range, the 30 to 40 range. So it's kind of exciting to see this like almost like a women's renaissance in lowrider culture. A lot more women's clubs are popping up. And so I think it's really exciting because I think we've also had more conversations, even in the Chicano community, about women's autonomy or women's, wants, needs, and that we can equally participate, right, alongside men in many, many mediums.
Thank you for saying that. And we're at a time where that hasn't just disappeared. We're, at a time where we're fighting for our reproductive rights, and they're being rolled back. A lot of rights that people took for granted are now under threat. And so maybe that conversation will be revived even more as we look at the loss of these rights.
Mm-hmm.
You were really young when you made this. This was 10, 12 years ago now.
Yeah, I was like a baby in my 20s. So, and I think, finished it, wrapped it all up in my 20s. And then, still did like a lot of short, little PBS short documentaries for a while. And then now I'm up in the Bay Area. I work in like Silicon Valley in tech with live production. So kind of always stayed, within, a filmmaker kind of world-ish, but leaned a lot more into the technology of it.
How did you and your family feel when the movie first came out? You must have been pretty proud as a young person to have a film in festivals and to be provoking this conversation.
Oh yeah, I was the burgeoning documentary filmmaker. I was so excited. I went to LA after I finished the film. I had a great, festival run. It really did help get my footing in, getting more funding for other films and going forward in my career. And I don't know, it was just good to also see the full cycle of something that this actually started as a project when I was an undergrad, as an undergraduate thesis that I wrote, and then, came to fruition as this film at a perfect, 28 minutes, and it tells like the story, so quickly, and I love it. And I think my family, probably overall, they're tired. I didn't even tell, I said, we'll leave the tickets for everyone else to come because I know you guys have seen it so many times. So I'm not even, the only people I'm requiring are my husband and my 10-year-old daughter who's never seen it in the theater. And I think she's going to be really excited. And then also to see your mom do a Q&A. And my husband hasn't seen it in the theater. And then my 8-month-old, I'm sure he'll just be babbling through, but it's just kind of excited that we're making it like a little family event to go down to Santa Cruz too. And, we're going to go see the campus as well and show them around.
Well, I'm really excited for you to come. And this is part of the Watsonville Film Festival, reclaiming the Cinco de Mayo holiday with 5 days of films and festivities honoring Mexican and Chicano heritage and pride. And they're screening 2 films, the More Than Cars, celebrating lowrider culture, and the Unique Ladies. They'll also have a barrio bus. There'll be a classroom on wheels. There's a Q&A with Professor Pulido, and also my guest today, Gloria Morán. So Gloria, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us here on Talk of the Bay. It's been a real pleasure, and congratulations again on just this wonderful story to tell about women who don't give up.
Yeah, which I think the majority of us don't. So
we can't. We just
yeah.
can't.
Got to get it done.
Yeah.
So
thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. All right.
Okay.
That was Gloria Morán, the filmmaker for The Unique Ladies, the story of the Women's Lowrider Club in San Diego. That's part of the Cinco de Mayo celebration in Watsonville coming up this weekend. It's actually happening Wednesday through Sunday, May 1st through 5th, at various times and location. 5 films and festivities will honor Mexican and Chicano heritage and pride. The celebration is part of a prestigious California Humanities Grant awarded to the Watsonville Film Festival to create the More Than Cars, celebrating lowrider culture, and a series of cultural events in partnership with the Pajaro Valley Arts and local car clubs. Gloria Morán will be present with her film on Saturday, May 4th at 6 p.m. She will be screening her film along with the other film, Dr. Pulido's award-winning documentary, Everything Comes from the Streets. They will be having a Q&A, and this is all happening at the Cinelux Green Valley Cinema on Green Valley Road in Watsonville. Exciting times. There will also be some lowrider tunes spun after that at Fruition Brewing. And then on Sunday, May 5th, there will be a free Cinco de Lowrider festivities at Pajaro Valley Arts, with the More Than Cars celebrating lowrider culture exhibit open to the public. The local riders group, the Watsonville Riders, will host their club showcase and a talk from 1 to 2 o'clock. There'll be music, food vendors, and lots of beautiful lowrider cars outside the Porcher Building at 280 Main Street between 11 and 4. That's Cinco de Lowrider in Watsonville, coming up this weekend right here. And I'm Rachel Ann Goodman. You're listening to Talk of the Bay on K-Squid. Watsonville, Salinas, Monterey, and Santa Cruz at 89.7, 90.7, and 89.5. We are community radio for the Central Coast.